Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast. Angell Deer is a medicine man and offers his work on sacred land through shamanic healing, energy healing, sound healing, breath work, plant medicine, and workshops and events. The Sanctuary is a community for all those who seek healing, transformation, ancient wisdom, and a place to come together to create a new way of living and relating. This is the Sanctuary Podcast, and this is Angell Deer.
It is another opportunity for us to restart our days, restart our weeks, reframe, and remember as we welcome today into the circle, Angell Deer. And before we start and have a conversation with Angell, let's just take a moment to just really get into this space. And if you have a practice of welcoming the directions, you have the practice of just sitting in silence, find your way to this circle as we greet this new opportunity and this new friend, Angell. Hello, Angell. How are you?
Hello. Good. How are you doing today?
I am well. I'm super excited that you have joined our circle today. And our first question, as you know, is we would love for you to share with us your creation story.
It's an interesting question. I'm sure you've heard that before. Originally, coming from an island that's in the Mediterranean Sea called Corsica. That's where my ancestors are from. And I believe that we are, shaped a lot by our ancestors and the land we come from. And definitely for me, there is always a tender spot in my heart for that place and my connection to that place. And despite I've been, living in the US now for more than 20 years and lived in other countries, lived in many different lands, I feel that this land is still informing me in many ways and informing my stories, informing my co-creation with spirit constantly. And I believe that what brought me to that work 15, 20 years ago was in fact echoes from things I heard, maybe not always consciously from that land. And there was a presence of this desire to be of service, to do that work of weaving with spirits and with others, to co-create together. And I feel that some days strongly than others, but at the moment, I guess maybe because it's the winter time and I get to slow down a little bit, which for me is an exercise. But I definitely do miss this land and miss the being there. And I can also feel that even by being, on the other side of the ocean and far away from it, it's very much alive in every cells of my body. And I really believe that most of the things I do are informed by that. And that creation story that's unfolding is informed by something that is invisible and often that I don't perceive, right? And that I don't even know it's co-creating for me in the background.
That's beautiful. I understand what you mean. I was born in Mexico and it is so alive in me every day being from that place. And as you said, co-creating. Now, I love that you use the word co-creation. I recently did a few podcasts on just like really what are we looking at when we're looking at co-creation and biodiversity. And in your own words, when you are speaking of co-creation, what does that mean to you? How does that feel? What does that look like?
Well, it's an acknowledgement that I am in relation, right? That whatever I do, every breath I take, every cell in my body, every even chemical processes, not even just my dreams or my thoughts, but even my physical matter is co-created, right? There is a part that is maybe what I call me, but in fact, if I really slow down and look at what I call me, it's weaved and entangled with many other aspects of what we call the greater self, maybe. And there is no possibility of creation without co-creation. It's an illusion, right? Because, not just for my physical life to breathe and to have good water and food, do I need relations, or am I connected to them? But in fact, even my body in this one moment that we are having this conversation is much more than my own cells. In fact, it's much more a colony of bacteria and viruses and so many other things that are informing my body, that are directing it. And even the process of thoughts, speech here or reflection, I think it's around less than 10% of our processes are conscious, right? What I will call the me or the I or the ego or this awareness, but 90% of it is the subconscious or the unconscious mind, right? So it's a little bit, I realized that one day I was in meditation and thought about my subconscious, my unconscious, which is the place of magic, right? The place that is non-linear, that is non-square, that is not rational, but it is very active, right? That is keeping me alive. And as we know from modern psychology, is in fact directing most of my life. But how much it is a reflection of this universe where only 5 to 10% of the matter that we know of is visible. And all the matter we've named, electrons, atoms, galaxies, this earth, this body, is only 10%. And 90% is what we call dark matter, invisible matter, maybe subconscious, right? And it struck me how, in fact, I am even a reflection of that in my own little microcosm of my own body and my own life, right? And what is that dark matter that we don't know about the universe is maybe even connected to my subconscious. And that's what I mean by co-creation, right? That there is a greater part of me. In fact, the great majority of me is that unconscious, unknown, what we consider magic part of the self. And in fact, when I'm alive and when I'm talking, what's really happening is that process of co-creation with this invisible. And in that invisible, you and I are one. You and I are probably much more entangled and weaved together than we will ever know.
I love that imagery of how we are a reflection of dark matter, and dark matter being the unknown and the potential and the magic. I haven't really heard someone frame it in that way. So thank you for that beautiful image. Now, as we entangle in this dark matter, recognizing that we are all connected in the unknown, how do you speak to people and what they do know to reach, to stay curious, to not be afraid of the unknown. We live in a Western society that focuses on really living in competition and not co-creation. So how do you, I know you teach and you have academies, how do you teach people to switch, to cross that bridge from the Western world of living things and really accept their dark matter possibility?
It's a good question. No, I truly believe that ultimately is being able to return. And I really say return because I believe we are born that way. And children, they do understand that much better than we do as adults very often. That we do need to return to loving the questions. Loving the space that are unknown. For me is loving the questions, right? Once I answer what I think I know, once I have a conscious thought, basically I'm already in such a contracted form, in limited possibilities, right? If I show you a beautiful leaf of a tree without asking you any question and just asking you to observe the vastness of your experience is infinite, right? It's immense. It's in fact so beyond words that if I ask you to describe the leaf, you will never be able to put the words to really properly describe what you are experiencing just by observation, right? By feeling, by the non-visible. And so I think, every person out there, even people that do not have access to this teaching or practice spirituality, have an experience of that magic, that sense of awe, even the feeling of love. And the world has kind of told us or invited us into that space where it's all about answers. It's all framed. It's all put into equations, right? Into scientific formulas. And despite it can be, quite useful. I mean, we are here talking through the internet and I'm grateful for science for that. I think when it comes to the human realms, when it comes to meaning, to purpose, it doesn't happen in that space. It happens beyond that space. And so we need to be able somehow to acknowledge and to have an experience that the unanswered question, the space of not knowing, is the space where we will find meaning and purpose. And that is extremely uncomfortable for the mind. That is, if you think of it, completely irrational. Doesn't make much sense that you would know more if you know less.
Mm-hmm.
But we can feel it, right? We can have an experience of it. And I think that is a universal experience, right? So it doesn't really matter what you studied and if you believe or not in God, in spirit, and in any of that. I think we all have that experience. We all carry it. And we have to reclaim it, nurture it back, because I really believe that's where new possibilities for this world, for our communities, for the way we live together is going to emerge from, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to emerge from a new invention, right? From science saying, hey, we found this and we solved this problem, right? Because we know solution for all our problems. So obviously the issue is not more science or more inventions, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably more heart, more dreams, more unknown, the space of the weaver, the space of the dreamer, the space of the poet, the wisdom speakers, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to give back value to that. And I think the only way we are going to give back value to it is to have an experience of it. So we truly understand this is not just beautiful talk and speech and nice poetry. In fact, it is the heart of creation. It is the heart of magic. It's the heart of possibilities. And I truly believe, we all know that somehow deep down somewhere.
When you speak of the poetry, and again, it doesn't feel fluffy like out there, it feels very grounded because I can hear your connection to land. How has land taught you a poetry of possibilities?
She always saved me, I guess, from my own afflictions and narrow-mindedness. The pain I cause to myself, right? When my mind becomes too tight and too entangled into, my own stories. And somehow she has this capacity to invite me to soften, to open, to be okay in not knowing, to be okay in just being instead of doing, right? To be okay with silence instead of words or talking. And as you probably know, because I'm sure you experienced that, it is in those moments that something emerges, right? From this unknown, from this dark matter, from, like we say, out of nowhere. I thought of that. Is it really from nowhere, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the mind, right? It's out of nowhere for the mind because it doesn't come from the mind. Mm. And I think the land has this amazing capacity to give that to us if we allow it, right? If we call for it, and if we nurture relationship, right? I think we also need to be mindful to not transform lands in another product that we consume because we are stressed and we need to go for a weekend in nature, and that's great, right? It will probably help you distress, but is that proper relationship if it's this one-way street, or if I'm consuming it, right, for just my own need? And I think for me, I've been taking care of this land I'm on for, almost 15 years now. If there's one thing she taught me is that, she gives a lot. Yes, she embodies abundance and she gives me way more than I can even dream of or use or things like that. But there's also a greater gift that comes when I am in true service of her, not for myself, not just because I enjoy it, not just because it's beautiful, not just because I can forage, my mushroom and my food, or grow my veggies, right? But just because we're in a relationship, right? It's like with a friend, right? Am I going to nurture or call that person just every time I don't feel good and I feel stressed? Or am I going to also give beyond myself, beyond any immediate rewards, just because I care?
Beautiful. I'd love to play a little bit with just this feeling that I have arising as you're talking about this, because there's, as someone who's worked the land and continues to work the land, there's this amazing lesson of practicality that it has. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we think that poetry isn't practical, that these things have to be so, again, unknown, that there aren't simple answers. And so I'd love to just kind of explore, like, how has the land taught you that weaving of poetry and practicality?
Well, I think speaking of practicality, I think nature in general, is ruthless, right? It doesn't have, It doesn't care for me, right? More than anything else, right? It does its things, right? And you can be a lover of nature and go for a beautiful hike somewhere and being eaten by a mountain lion, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's no anger there.
Mm-hmm.
There is no judgment of you, or it's not that he doesn't recognize, what you've done, but literally there is not maybe that romanticized version of nature that we often have in the West, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And anybody that has done vision quests or, deep nature immersions know how, it is unforgiving, right? Because it has its own laws.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are disconnected from it and have forgotten how to listen and how to be in a relationship, well, we won't be part of that system, right? That system very quickly will take our life, simple as that. So I think for me, it brings me back to, that notion of practicality. That's how I see it, right? It's very, very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it doesn't have ego and it doesn't have a specific agenda towards me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not more than the deer or the bird, right? Or the mushroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just one element of many on that land. And I think, land reminded me of that. But when we slow down, once I think we go beyond just that kind of practical aspect of it, and that there's also in that ferocity, in that unapologetic way of being, a lot of poetry in it, a lot of magic, a lot of stories. In fact, the land, carries all those old stories and of people, of animals, and ancient times. And she's that broad. That's how I feel it, right? She can be that ruthless mother. And she also can be the witch, the wizard, right? The poet. She can be that, give us that space too, right? But she's never one or the other. She's always both all the time, right? So many archetypes and elements dwell in nature and are always constantly alive, right? And I guess as a seeker, as the one that enters that space, we need to be aware of all those aspects, right? We need to build a relationship with all of that, not just one aspect of it. That will prevent us, I think, from seeing it as an object or a relationship that is quite unique, right? It's like a person, right? People have different sides, facets, right? There's a mystery to everyone, right? Even if you've lived with someone your whole life, you do know that there's a part of them you still don't know, right? There's a mystery there. And I guess that's what keeps us returning, keep us inquiring, keep us deepening that relationship, right? Because it's an infinite pit where we'll never reach the bottom of understanding of it.
I love it. The universality of non-attachment, right, gives you infinite possibility, and we can see that in the land and in nature. So I'm curious, as a keeper of land that deals with people who have been taught to control even their climate, right? Climate controlled areas. How do you speak to a return instead of people, like you said earlier, finding a solution in science? How can we start to see that as, again, AI and everyone's starting to, explore and play with that? What does that mean to us? And how do we, for me, I feel it's like a fork in the road, right? Of awe. Well, with awe it's fear inspiring or wonder inspiring. So how do we teach people the non-attachment, the non-controlling of their fear to encapsulate to control, even, control the plant kingdom. How do you inspire people? What are you seeing out there? What are the words that the land is speaking through you for us when it comes to this fork in the road of awe?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to ponder, and I often, question myself on how to do it in the best way, in the way that served the best. First, I think we have to recognize that we can't teach everyone, and not everybody wants to learn.
Exactly.
Right. So I never forced the teaching on someone that just is not open to yet. I think there's a internal process for every human being to come to those places, to be potentially at some point in their life called by the return. Either it is through very often personal suffering, right? Something happened and then we realize we don't have all the solutions, or the world doesn't answer the big question. And then we start searching for people and places that might have different answers, or maybe different questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first step, I think. There needs to be such a deep desire to understand that and to meet it, because the teachings are not easy, right? It's easy to think that it's just another type of school or university, right? I think that's often my difficulty, with students, is that they understand this is not school or university 2.0, right? Because many people come to animism, shamanism, spirituality, with kind of that outlook. And I could not, because that's the way we learn to learn. And it's such a different way that we're going to be taught, right? Because it's very much through self-revelation more than any teachers, right? I'm just providing, setting up the scene. But really the teachings, they are self-taught or self-revealed, right? Spirit is going to speak through us. The tree is going to speak the land, right? But I think the difficulty, especially in the world we're living in, is that people don't have that connection to nature anymore in the same way that people have on ancestral lands, right, when they're still living that way. And our culture, or we don't really have a culture, our society is so far away because everything has been materialized. It's a materialistic, right, society and science, that very often the way we come to it is very colonized, right? Is very scientific, it's very rational. And so it takes a lot of slowing down, a lot of encounter, deep commitment and calling to make this happen. And I truly believe that unless people are at a point in their life where they have acknowledged somehow, somewhere internally, that the system they are in is not going to answer most of their big questions or resolve their relationships. There's no book out there they can buy that is going to fix it. Then they come to it. I think then there is enough internal turmoil and suffering, and therefore a deeper calling, that there is a potential for transformation and new learning.
You're listening to the Sanctuary Podcast with Angell Deer. While you're listening, browse the website at www.thesanctuaryheal.com.
That is very true. Not everyone wants to learn. Not everyone seeks. Today as I was cleaning, after my little baby chicks that I have to integrate to my other chickens, I find a lot of depth of knowledge and wonder when I'm dealing with a lot of manure. I don't know. It gives me a lot of thought, but there was this thought as I was cleaning, and I was like, this consciousness of, how society is speeding up, and this fear of being left behind, of like not having the fastest gadgets and not having all this thing. And it just of the consciousness. Not, it wasn't mine. I knew it wasn't mine. And I was like, I'm okay if I'm left behind, from this, this runway that people are on. But I think there's this feeling of, one of the feelings that we're afraid of is abandonment. And that feeling of being left behind from a society as it speeds towards whatever it is, its continued colonization of things. How do we speak to that wound? How do we tell people that it's okay if you don't follow the speedway? It's okay if you stay back. It's okay if you're left behind.
It's tricky, because I think we have some hardcore wiring in our design for survival and for belonging, right? That's things that we look at all costs, right? I was reflecting the other day and telling a friend I was, is very angry about people that are, accumulating a lot of stuff, right? Money, cars, but that doesn't matter, right? Just greed in general, or let's say over accumulation of stuff. And I was reflecting that it comes from this very ancient wiring of survival, right? Because the more I have food and the more I have a shelter and the more I have things, right, the more chance I have to survive in case of, bad weather or apocalypse or however you see it, right? And so, a lot of people accumulate money, for example, without understanding that it comes from, something that is hardwired in us, that we all wants to feel that we are safe enough to provide for ourselves, for our family members, right? And you could say that, that's probably healthy, right? That we have this feeling that we need to be able to survive and take care of each other's, right? But obviously, today it has taken just a disproportionate size that it creates problems for others, and it is not, any more healthy to do that. So you pair that with our need for belonging, all right? That goes from being in social connection with others, but also very often that is very weaved and intertwined into our unresolved wounds of, not being seen, not being heard, not being held. And so we are desperate, for connection. And I think when you pair that, people therefore, very often stay in systems, either family or cultural or society or jobs that are not answering, their purpose, that are not making them truly happy. But those ancient wiring of belonging and survival are so strong that people are not going to change or quit, right? And so they are trapped in this race, right, of more, of the newest thing or of all of that, right? And I don't think people can really get out of this fast train unless they really heal and see what is it that they're really running away from. What it will happen if you were to slow down, if you were not distracted the whole day by X, Y, and Z. And most people don't have the tool to even sit with whatever is there, right? I think that's also the reality, because we live in a society that carry a lot of trauma, still creating a lot of it too on top of it. And it's not easy to feel our bodies. And if we can't feel them, well, there's the next escape, the next movie, the next phone, the next, gadget that's going to allow you to keep going, right? Avoiding. So I don't even know where we start, because it's so embedded at so many levels of our society that it's going to take a while that people, have those tools and feel that not only it is safe and possible, but in fact there is greater meaning for their life and greater joy and happiness that is possible, and in a different way.
Yes, what kind of playing here with what direction I kind of want to go with two directions, because I feel that in part, one of the things that we learn or that we need to learn as a society is how to grieve, because we haven't learned how to do that, how to let go. And it kind of brings me back to, the whole letting go and left behind to, we have now this term that we have embraced in Western modernity of sustainability. And we are putting the stamp of sustainability on saying we are in good relation, to land. But, I've spoken to a lot of elders and they hate the word, because they don't believe that sustainability goes into co-creation, doesn't go into reciprocity, that it just is about maintaining the status quo. So how, in your own words, can we, go beyond this sustaining, as you said, this, taking care of you and yours, and really go into relationship and reciprocity?
Well, first, I think, the biggest thing is we need to really acknowledge the depth of sickness in the system. Like, really being able to see it. As long as we consider the system that has some faults and we can save it or fix it, sustainability is a good example of that, right? Let's just make a greener product. Let's just make, something that has less impact somehow on the environment. But we're not changing our behavior and the way we relate to each other and to land. And we're not really assessing what's really is the problem behind all that. Then, we're going to be in a world that is, a complete desert with only green products everywhere. But just more product, right? Same product, I think, that often makes me laugh because, we buy products to get good conscience that's maybe a little bit better for the environment, but it's still highly problematic on the way it's made, right? Even if you think of, organic veggies at the supermarket, nobody talks about slave labors, right?
Yeah.
Most of those veggies are grown by people that are slaves, modern slaves, right?
Yep.
They're underpaid, they're far from their family. Very often they have absolutely no recognition in the system, no social status and places, no health insurance, etc., etc. I mean, the list goes on, right? And they're working in terrible conditions for their bodies, so we can enjoy a greener product, right? Is that better than a product that's industrially made and collected by a machine? I don't know, to be honest. I don't really know about that. I'm not really sure. Once we start to see the depth of that illness that this industrial world has put on all of us, nobody is immune to it. And the consequence it has, not just on lands or indigenous people or animals or waterways, but even our own self, right? Some people maybe don't really care about any of that, but they might care about them, maybe their body, I don't know, their health. Once we start seeing the impact it has on that, we realize that we need to rebuild from the ground up. And it doesn't mean, going back to cave age and living, with nothing. But it definitely means that the way we are seeing modernity, the way we are rushing humanity towards this wall that we all know we are going, if we keep going that way, none of that is going to save us, right? It doesn't matter how sustainable the new car is or the new energy productions. If we still have the same minds and the same heart with the same wound, we are going to keep creating suffering. So that's really the problem. And I don't think it's very often addressed, right? It's like the war on drugs, right? We don't really talk about why people consume that amount of drug, why people are in so much pain, right? It's fascinating that at the age where pretty much everybody is on the internet and on Facebook, right? There's, 2 billion people on Facebook. That there has never been that many suicide in the US alone of people just because they are completely alone, right? So what? We need a better Facebook. we need an AI Facebook. We need a fake, person AI that we can talk to. Do you really truly believe? Are we that sick? Are we that lost that we believe that that's going to be the solution? And sadly, many people believe that because I think they haven't realized yet, especially if you are quite privileged today, you might not feel the pain yet as much as others, that this is going nowhere, But, people that slow down and a lot of, critical thinker in our world and obviously native people and many people in this world knows that this is a definition of insanity, right? Keep doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
Yeah. Something that strikes me in your conversation, it's something that I speak a lot to when I speak about cacao, really the cost of cacao and the slave labor in cacao and chocolate. But is the expendability of human life, like how humans, right, in the equation of being green or in our equation of having the society that we want to have are expendable. And I'm wondering if part of that expendability, right, is we are so removed that our body is land. We're so removed that we forget that we are land. When you see land, you're like, okay, I need to do something, or it will do something to me to a certain degree. And so I'm wondering and curious if you see, that disconnect, is that part of that disconnect and is part of our way to return back to, a way of living in relationship to acknowledge the land inside of us.
Yeah, it's the heart of the problem here, I think. It's the heart of it. And, I'm going to give you a little story, an example. We do, a lot of retreats and gathering on the land, Vision Quest and Sweat Lodge and other gatherings. And it's always, it's more and more popular those days. People want to experience those ways. And we bring elders and people love to meet elders and spend time with them. But when we always, get more people and we can even accommodate, right, when we do the things. But when we say, hey, we have a day of taking care of the land because there is a spring cleaning to be done on the land, or there was a flood and we need to rebuild the path or a bridge, or there is planting to be done, it's almost impossible to get people to come. My experience is very often that if there is not a direct benefit for people, like, for example, personal healing, they don't see that land caretaking as something essential. It's very hard for people to understand that when you are emptying your manure from your girls, from your chickens, that in fact you're learning something there, right? I love my chicken and I love to go sit with them, and there's not a day where I don't sit with them where I don't learn something, right? Just being with them, right? But if I just pass by the chicken coop and because I'm coming to an event and I find them cute and, and I pick up a few eggs and then I leave, what kind of relationship do I already have? Zero, right? None. It's entertainment, right? And I think the problem with lands, our lands and our national parks and reserves and the way we've separated land or good land or state parks and things from other lands is that we made it an object. We made it an animal in a cage, in a zoo, right? And I forget that, in fact, the land that I'm sitting on, even if I live in the city, is as precious and as sacred and deserve my care and carry the same power, the same beauty potentially for me, the same wisdom. And the reason is, I believe, is that because we are very desensitized. That's how you say it, I guess. I don't know. We lost the sensitivity to our own bodies. Because once you do that work for long enough, at some point you do start feeling in your own bodies what's going on in the land. Right? And that's a blessing and a burden. I know for me it is. Right? It requires great gymnastic and work to not be taken by the overwhelmingly pain and distress that is there. Right? But that's my commitment. As I agree to interrelationship with land, as I agree to interrelationship with my body, I agree to meet every part of it with the same open heart, with the same willingness, with the same curiosity. So I need to be able to, coming back to what you were sharing earlier, to grieve, to feel the pain, to feel the rage, to feel powerless sometimes, hopeless sometimes, right? I need to be able to feel all those feelings, because if not, my actions are going to be disconnected from the roots of the problem. And I'm going to speak from a very narrow-minded place of ego and human-centered solutions, which is also another problem when it comes to land. It's very human-centered, right? What do we do? State park and national parks, and why do we, rebuild the lands or rewild the lands? Very often it's for us, right? The conversation about indigenous people is very often completely absent, right? Inexistent. And the conversation about wildlife sometimes is a little bit present, but it's kind of for our enjoyment, right? The beauty of it. And that transfer into, the way we have the biggest land in this country are dead lands. They are the lawns that we take care in our gardens, right? Green lawns, which are complete deserts and a complete, it's insanity, right? It makes no sense on the nature perspective, but aesthetically, it's pleasing because it's in order, right? It's clean. There's nothing that doesn't belong, right? And that's very much how we relate with ourselves and with each others. We're very afraid of the wild when it comes to the wild inside ourselves and therefore out there. We're very afraid of what's different, voices that we don't understand, because we're afraid of the voices we don't understand in ourselves. So there's no return to land without returning to our somatic sensibility, sensations. There is no capacity to heal the land that will last if we don't heal our bodies and the connection to each other's, right? the pain that you carry, I need to take care of it and be interested in it as much. And sometimes I believe even a little bit more than my own.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. As we find ourselves close to the close of this circle, I hope to be able to speak to you more, Angell, in other circles again here and in other places. But I'd love for you to share with everyone listening around the world how to support your land, how can they join in? What programs do you have? What cleaning projects do you have that you need help?
Yeah, well, first we have, animals and bees and, and a lot of, we have a women's garden with medicinal herbs. We grow food. We probably have replanted over 600 or 700 native trees and plants and bushes and berries. So first, the biggest thing, very often we need help. We need people to just come, even for a day, right? And you might not experience a SWAT lodge or a vision quest. You might just, gather sticks and stones and chop woods, right? So I think for us, that's, one thing that is very undervalued by people, I think, is that those experiences of you being on the land and collecting branches and fixing the bird houses. It might be a moment when you do that and the dark matter inside of you starts speaking something you haven't never heard before. So don't see that as separated from your own healing, from your own transformation. In fact, I think it's essential. And then, we have obviously a lot of gatherings in person and online that people can find on our, calendars. And we try to support a lot of elders, a lot of grandmothers and some grandfathers that we believe, carry essential wisdom for the future, for this time we are in, this great turning, this time of transformation. And so any support that people can provide, either by coming to our events or sending donations, 100% of what we get here is going back to the land, right? It's going back to the people of the land. So, yeah, whatever people feel called to, there's always a place for you here. And we always definitely need some hands and some hearts.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well, I hope one day to come visit, and I
would love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do anything. That is how you get to know the land, right?
I put you in charge of chickens. No, you have chickens. Yeah. Yeah. They are so much fun.
They are. Oh my God. So much going on with chickens. We have a peahen too, and we just put a mirror up for her, and she is just loving her self-reflection,
I love them. They're so amazing.
They are. Well, Angell, thank you so much for taking time to meet us here in the circle, for inspiring our entanglement of dark matter, knowing that as we sit with the unknown, we can sit with the universality of it, of all of our feelings, and that there's space for us there. So thank you, my friend, and many blessings to you and your people and your land and all your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and everybody that is listening to this talk. And yeah, thank you for the work you do too. I know you're very essential in this great work of transformation. So I honor you in this.
I honor you, and I'm glad that we are walking together.
You've been listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, we're a source of talks about spirituality, personal transformation, energy healing, shamanism, and earth-based practices. For more, visit thesanctuaryheal.com. On the website, you can find out about our events, our retreats, Healing Offering, our spiritual blog, and you can also register for the newsletter. Again, visit thesanctuaryheal.com. Till next time, this is the Sanctuary Podcast, and Angell Deer signing off.